Section 12 of Under the Guns, A Woman's Reminiscences of the Civil War, by Annie Wittenmyer. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Secretary Stanton's Generous Gift. In October 1863, I came up from the hospitals in the front to attend a sanitary convention at Muscatine, Iowa. As I was legally commissioned the sanitary agent of the state by Governor Samuel J. Kirkwood, having been elected to that position by the legislature of Iowa, my presence was greatly desired by the workers. The convention was large and representative. But my own heart was greatly burdened with touching messages from dying soldiers to their wives and children. In the midst of the convention I boldly announced my purpose to try to establish a home for soldiers' orphan children. The proposition was received with the wildest enthusiasm; and the convention took action at once, not only endorsing the movement, but pledging financial support. There was no precedent to follow, as there was no institution of the kind in all the world. I was elected president of the Orphans' Home Association, but declined, and Governor Stone, the newly elected governor of the state, was chosen. The ablest men and women of the state were brought into the organization, and the home was duly opened in a rented house. The house, although large, was soon crowded to overflowing, and we could get no larger building that would accommodate the hundreds who were applying for admission. A committee sent out to search for more commodious quarters reported new fine barracks on a piece of confiscated land of 30 acres adjoining the town of Davenport. The barracks were new and well built, and had cost $46,000. The leading men of Iowa, as well as the women, were actively enlisted in the work. Ex-Governor Kirkwood and his private secretary, N. H. Brainerd, Governor Stone, Judge Lowe, Judge Coles, Chaplain Ingalls, John Parvin, and many others whose names were a guarantee of honest and faithful work, were active. I was selected to go to Washington and secure these barracks as a gift from the government, if possible. If I could not obtain them as a gift, I was authorized to offer $1,000 a year as rent for them. I protested strongly against being sent on such an important mission, but I was overruled, and was obliged to accept the duty. When I reached Washington, October, 1865, I went to the Surgeon General's office, and made known my mission, and secured an official statement that those barracks would not be needed for hospital purposes. I want to say in this connection that Surgeon General J. K. Barnes had always cooperated with me most heartily in all my work. I then called on Quartermaster General Meigs, the man who with such wonderful executive ability fed and clothed the great armies of the Republic, furnishing quarters and equipments, and paid their wages with an honesty and fidelity that have never been questioned. I had often met him before, and no one who ever saw him could forget his honest, rugged, but kindly face. When I made known my mission he looked surprised and pleased, and then said, "Well, now, that is certainly a good use to put these deserted barracks to." "General," I said, "all I want you to do is to say officially to the government that they will not be needed for military purposes." "They were never needed. They ought never to have been built. It was a waste of money." "Then, General, you can certainly say they will not be needed for military purposes. Please say that officially." He took up his pen and wrote out a statement informing the government that the new cavalry barracks at Davenport, Iowa, would not be needed for military purposes, even if hostilities were resumed. His statement covered over 2 pages. Thus armed, I went to the office of the Secretary of War. I had become acquainted with Mr. Stanton under the most favorable circumstances. The governor of Iowa had commended me to him, and early in 1862 obtained for me a general order for transportation of myself and supplies and rations; and later, when I called on him personally, I was the bearer of letters of introduction and commendation from some of his most influential and trusted friends. Afterwards he always seemed glad to see me, and graciously granted all my requests. He was prompt and clear in all his business methods, and was by far the best listener I have ever met. When I talked to him there was no need of repeating; he apprehended my meaning. When he talked there was no room to misunderstand him. There was no fuss and bluster, or pretense, or attempt to show off himself or his authority; and that pleased me. I went, therefore, to his office with great hope and courage. When I asked to see the Secretary of War, a young jolly looking officer came forward and asked: "What can I do for you, madam?" "I wish to see Mr. Stanton." "Mr. Stanton is in Boston. I am Major Eccles, acting Secretary of War, and will attend to any business you may have to transact." I informed him as to my mission. He laughed heartily. "That, madam, is a little beyond my prerogative. I don't feel authorized to give away the property of the government." I put myself at once in telegraphic communication with Mr. Stanton. He asked some questions as to the legal status of the institution, and that was all I heard that day. The next morning I took another requisition to the War Department. It was for hospital supplies. I distinctly remember the first few items: 1,800 blankets, 2,500 sheets, 3,000 pillow cases, 1,500 pillows, and so on, till everything I could remember that could be of use to the home were enumerated. When I handed the document to Major Eccles, I said: "Here is a small requisition I should like to have to go in with the application for the property." "This is a small requisition?" And he laughed heartily as he read the list aloud. "Yes, sir," I said with great gravity, "this is a small requisition; but with the help of the generous people of Iowa, I hope we shall be able to get along with that." "Now, seriously, on what grounds have you a right to ask these supplies from the government?" "Well, sir, I call your attention to the fact that at the beginning of the war the government had very few hospital supplies. The loyal people of the North helped to fit them up. The loyal state of Iowa sent nearly $200,000 worth of supplies into the military hospitals. Now, all I ask is that you give us back a few of the supplies that we gave you, as you no longer need them." "You are certainly entitled to them. I will do what I can to get this through." The Iowa delegation at Washington and the officers in the War Department, including Major Eccles, became greatly interested, and anxious that Secretary Stanton's answer should be favorable. When the answer came, it was: "Will you accept the property subject to the approval of Congress?" I flashed back my answer as quickly as possible: "Yes, and will get the bill through without annoyance to you." As I was obliged to leave the War Department before an answer came, Major Eccles drove up to the house of my friend where I was stopping, with the telegraphic order, turning over the property to the association. The gift of the barracks and the hospital supplies aggregated $52,000. I was lifted to the clouds, figuratively speaking, and rushed to the telegraph office, and sent off dispatches to the newspapers in Iowa. The next morning all the leading papers in Iowa appeared with great headlines announcing the magnificent gift. Before Congress met we had bought out the heirs of the confiscated property, remodeled and plastered the buildings, and had nearly 500 soldiers' orphan children comfortably housed there. Honorable Hiram Price, a member of Congress from the Davenport district, took charge of our bill and carried it through Congress without any annoyance to Mr. Stanton. The fact that we had possession and were housing and supporting so many soldiers' orphan children in these barracks made opposition almost impossible. With this valuable property in our possession, it was an easy task to induce the state legislature to take this burden off our hands and make it a state institution. The frame barracks had been replaced by substantial brick buildings, but the home is still conducted on the cottage plan, and is one of the finest institutions of the state. Edwin M. Stanton's generous action in giving this timely help to a weak society secured the success of a worthy institution that has educated and sent out thousands of children to be good and useful citizens. Mr. Stanton was one of the strong, true, honest men who made Mr. Lincoln's administration a success. He was intensely loyal, and intolerant to treason and self-seeking, and he made traitors tremble on both sides of the line. He was, more than any other man, the balance wheel in the complicated machinery of the government which held and regulated its internal workings. He was a clear and close thinker, a keen and sagacious discerner of human motives, a tireless worker, and was too open and frank to conceal his opinions of men and things. Too unselfish to enrich himself, he toiled on, literally killing himself at work, and dying poor. When passion and prejudice have passed away, he will receive his full meed of praise. The Special Diet Kitchen Work. No part of the army service was so defective during the first 2 years of the war as the cooking department in the United States government hospitals. Few of the men employed as cooks in these hospitals were trained or skilled. Most of them had obtained their knowledge of cookery after being assigned to duty, under most unfavorable circumstances, and without the proper facilities for doing their work. One general kitchen provided the food for all, the sick, the wounded, and the dying, as well as the nurses and convalescents. Where there were women nurses in a hospital, and they could get a little stove of their own, special dishes were prepared for the worst patients. But there was no general system of providing dainty and suitable diet for the thousands in need of delicate food in home-like preparation. The supplies coming from the generous people of the North occasioned great anxiety. The surgeons forbade their distribution at the bedside of the patients, on the ground that something might be given which would endanger their lives or retard their recovery, and ordered them turned over to the commissary. Often supplies thus turned over failed to reach the sick or wounded. It was under these trying circumstances that the plan of a system of special diet kitchens came to me, clearly and definitely as a flash from the skies, like a divine inspiration. It was in December 1863 that the thought came to me, and I hastened at once to put the plan into execution. Everybody seemed to accept the plan with enthusiasm, and the Sanitary and Christian Commission, and the officers and surgeons of the army all hastened to cooperate with me in inaugurating and accomplishing this great reform. The plan in itself was very simple and practical, and was entirely satisfactory to all parties. 1. The food for those needing special diet was prescribed by the ward surgeons. A bill of fare was provided, with the name of the patient and the number of his bed, for every patient put on a special diet. And on this bill the surgeon prescribed his diet by making a mark opposite the articles the patient was allowed. This plan gave the sick or wounded man a chance to express his own wants in regard to food, which was a great advantage. 2. These bills of fare were consolidated by the ward master, and a copy sent to the superintendent of the special diet kitchen, and the bills were returned to their places again. So, with these consolidated lists before them, the managers of the special diet kitchen knew just what to cook and just the quantity. 3. The food thus ordered was prepared in the special diet kitchen, which, although under separate management, was a part of the hospital, and as completely under the control of the authorities as any other part of the hospital. The kitchens were fitted up with ranges and other suitable conveniences, and were under the management of suitable ladies employed by the surgeons in charge. A storeroom conveniently near or adjoining was provided, where the commuted rations of soldiers put on special diet were stored, also the supplies furnished by the Sanitary and Christian Commissions; and the woman in charge of the special diet kitchen carried the keys. 4. These dietary nurses were not cooks. They only superintended the work. Many of those who worked in these kitchens were soldiers who were somewhat disabled, or convalescent soldiers who were not able to join their regiments. In large hospitals, where 1,000 or 1,500 were furnished meals 3 times a day, the work was divided up, and each man had his part of the work, and soon became an expert in it. There were in the large kitchens from 25 to 30 men required to do the work. The food, thus systematically prepared under the watchful eyes of women competent to govern such a force and direct the work, was brought to the bedside of the patients in home-like preparation. No mistake would likely be made in the distribution, as each patient had at the head of his bed the list of articles of food prescribed by the surgeon of his ward. The first kitchen was opened at Cumberland Hospital, Nashville, Tennessee. The Christian Commission of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, sent me the lumber to build a kitchen, storeroom, and a ladies' room, and 2 of the largest ranges in the market. Mary E. Moorhead, a wealthy lady of that city, daughter of Hon. J. K. Moorhead, at that time a member of Congress, and one of Pittsburgh's most honored citizens, and Hannah Shaw, who has since distinguished herself in missionary work in China, took charge of that kitchen. Miss Moorhead has since the close of the war devoted herself to benevolent work. The change wrought in that hospital was so marvelous that all the leading surgeons from Louisville to Chattanooga were anxious for the establishment of special diet kitchens in connection with their hospitals. Many of them could not believe the wonderful stories circulated as to the great reform wrought in Cumberland Hospital, and, like the Queen of Sheba, came long distances to see for themselves as to the truth of the matter, and like her confessed that "the half had not been told them." I was most generally sustained in this work by the Christian Commission, who turned all their supplies into these kitchens, and paid all the expenses of this service. I was chosen superintendent of the special diet kitchen work, which rapidly extended all along the lines from Vicksburg to Petersburg. The surgeons accepting this help agreed to employ the women selected by me, and allow them to have charge of the supplies furnished for use in the special diet kitchens, from the government and sanitary and Christian commissions. The surgeons had charge of the kitchen, appointed these women, and directed their work, as in all parts of their hospitals. There was no opposition to this work. Mr. Lincoln, Secretary Stanton, Surgeon General Barnes, and Assistant Surgeon General Wood gave me their endorsement and all the aid I needed. It soon became an admitted fact that thousands of lives were being saved by the supply of better food, which many of them needed more than they did medicine. Surgeon General Barnes became so enthusiastic over the plan that he appointed a commission of United States Army surgeons to consider it, with a view of adopting it and engrafting it upon the United States General Hospital system. I was invited by the Surgeon General to meet with them. The committee received me most graciously at their regular sittings in Washington, D.C., and listened with great respect to my explanations, and after carefully considering my plans adopted them as a part of the regular United States hospital system. To give some idea of the magnitude of the work, out of over 100 special diet kitchens established by me, I give the amount of food and rations issued from 16 special diet kitchens, a record of which I happen to have now on hand for February, 1865. Tea, 100,350. Potatoes, 47,725. Hash, 7,925. Roast beef, 36,599. Buttered toast, 28,539. Bread and butter, 133,938. Stewed fruit, 29,266. Eggs, 15,538. Reader note: as the list is rather long, I will not enumerate all the items. Suffice it to say that the total amount came to 899,472 rations. End note. This was the regular bill of fare in all the special diet kitchens. If any one of these articles could not be obtained, they were marked off. Turkey was only on the list occasionally. It will be seen by the great variety that the appetites of the patients were consulted. Nothing, however, was issued without it being ordered by the surgeon in attendance upon the patient. Some of the articles furnished on the above list may seem unfit for sick men. But when we take into consideration that there were many wounded men who were allowed by the surgeons to eat anything they might choose, and others who were homesick, or hopelessly ill, or dying, who in the loneliness of suffering remembered and craved something because a kind mother's hand had once prepared such dainties for them, it is no longer a matter of wonder. And since the loved ones at home could not cheer them with their presence and love in their dark hours of suffering, it was a delightful task for these noble women to substitute home food and words of cheer. It is the verdict of history that this system of special diet kitchens saved thousands of lives. During the last 18 months of the war, over 2 million rations were issued monthly from this long line of special diet kitchens, established many of them almost under the guns. The American Republic, its glories and its dangers. The remarkable growth of the American Republic is without a parallel in the history of the world. 100 years ago she was a feeble nation, in her infancy, and scarcely recognized by the other nations of the earth. Now she stands foremost among the governments of the world, and leads the nations in almost everything. Her territory is extensive and contiguous, lying between two great oceans, and bounded on the north and south by navigable lakes and seas. Her resources are almost boundless. She gluts the markets of the world with her silver and gold. Her iron and copper ores are rich and abundant, nearly all the metals needed for the use of her people may be had for the digging, and she may bedeck her children with the jewels gathered from her own fields. She can produce an abundance of cotton, wool, flax, hemp, and silk. She is already the chief competitor in the cotton markets of Asia, and from her own looms is clothing her people in muslins and fine linen, and her daughters in royal purple from her silk factories. Her food supply is immense. Her grain fields are broad and rich enough to supply bread to the millions of her own people, and to meet the needs of the needy nations of the earth. Her meat supply is so large that she is glad to share it with all the world. Her fruit yield is ample, sufficient in variety and abundance to meet the needs of all. Only a few luxuries are denied her. She could shut herself in, and live luxuriously on her own products. There is not one thing that comes from abroad that her people could not live comfortably without. Tea, coffee, spices, and tropical fruits are not necessary to human life. Her woods are abundant and fine, equal to any reasonable demand. Her furniture goes to the ends of the earth. Her building material is abundant and of superior quality. She has granite and marble in variety, nearly all kinds of valuable building stones, and clays of almost every description. Her potteries are now doing creditable work, and her china and glasswares are attracting attention in other lands. The new process by which glass china is produced is a marvelous success. Her people are intelligent and enterprising. The rich resources of the country have stimulated their activities and awakened their inventive genius till they are the leaders in the work of the world, and the most thrifty and enterprising nation on the face of the globe. They have tunneled the mountains, bridged the rivers, created waterways, made the wilderness to bloom, and chained steam and electricity as motive powers to their chariot wheels, to do their bidding on the land and under the sea. A system of government has been established superior to any other known before among men. And a system of free schools that has no parallel on the face of the earth has made the people intelligent and efficient for the practical work of life, far beyond other nations, taken as a mass. And yet with all these blessings, dangers threaten her. One of the dangers that threaten this glorious republic is the foreign immigration. Attracted by her rich resources and the marvelous stories of her wealth, the people of other nations are coming to share our blessings. The danger is not in the number who come, but in the character of many of these newcomers. They come to a new nation with old habits and old prejudices, and another language. They are a misfit. They care nothing for the American Republic and her free institutions, only as they will add to their physical comfort and personal aggrandizement. They do not assimilate or become Americanized. Many of them are ignorant and brutish. They huddle together. They are as much foreigners as they were in Hungary or Sicily. They remain foreigners, and they have nothing in common with us except their physical needs. Among them are the vicious and the idle. Our thoroughfares are filled with tramps and beggars. The prisons of our cities are crowded with foreign criminals and paupers. Almost 2/3 of all the criminals and paupers in our large cities are foreign born. Criminals flying from justice. Paupers who, from infirmities of body and mind, or from idle and dissolute habits, must be supported, find a refuge here. Statesmen may well question as to how long this republic can take into her bosom, and accord all the rights of citizenship to the criminals and paupers of the world without danger. But there is danger from our own people. The accumulation of great wealth, without a corresponding increase of brains and culture, is giving us an undesirable aristocracy. They ape the old effete aristocracies of the Old World. They discount American institutions and adore a title. They try to rule business, politics, and social life. but this evil will be overcome. In this country, where there are no entailed estates, death equalizes wealth and power every few years. Memorial Day. Bow low, fair clouds, and kiss the earth, where human freedom had her birth, where heroes struggled in the fight, and patriots died for human right. Bow low, and rainbow glories shed above a nation's gallant dead. Then bear the news o'er land and sea, earth's fettered millions may be free. Fly low, bright birds with painted wings, and join the song a nation sings, a glad and sacred jubilee, for God has set his people free. Sing of the flag with starry field, sing of the eagle and the shield, sing of the victories of peace, sing of the time when wars shall cease. Bloom on, sweet flowers, thy perfume shed above each soldier's lowly bed. Kind nature's fairest tribute bring, and clothe each mound with flowers of spring. Look up, with loving dewy eyes, into the blue recording skies, and pledge in red and white and blue, that May flowers ever will be true. Let all the people gather near, and bow themselves with reverent fear. For God with mighty outstretched hand has graciously redeemed our land. Come, peace, and spread thy sheltered wing. Come, love, thy sweetest tribute bring. Come all, and join a sacred lay to celebrate Memorial Day. The end of Under the Guns, A Woman's Reminiscences of the Civil War, by Annie Wittenmyer. Recorded by Céline Major.